Okay, I'm using the MacBook Pro with Windows 10. It's an Intel chip, and I launched the ICOM software CS705 for the IC705. It's a little bit different than the other radios that I showed earlier using the program Scan Edge. One interesting thing I noticed, the section where you have 9. Okay. This computer want to go to sleep there. A section doesn't exist on the 705, the 0 to 9 band scan, or not, or what do you call it, VFO scan. So I suspect it's an old concept that's not supported anymore. I haven't tried this, but I figure I'll just ignore and just stick to this main program. And because this is an HF radio, VHF, UHF, let me zoom in. There's a little bit more. And bring it up a little bit. There we go. I put in the HF bands for all the amateur radio, 2200 meters, 630, 160, 80, 60, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, 10, 6 and 2. Basically what the radio can cover. And the number 0 position, I call it full scan, basically from 0.500 to 30 megahertz. And it's also a D-Star radio. So I put a scan there for D-Star 2 meters and D-Star 70 centimeters, and the R is dropped off. You can't put in as long as a character as you can, for example, on the ID52. And then usual GMR, FRS, and MURS stations and some commercials. So I just threw it in. Over time, I would determine what's I actually use and don't use, or make any changes. Probably change them to particular segments. Now, if you notice under mode, you have DV, FM, and let me just select one of these. You have the options of LSB, USB, CW, CWR, RT, AM, FM, DB, wide FM, so forth. And if you leave it blank and you hit scan, it will scan in whatever mode you're in. If you're in FM, then it will scan in FM. If you're in USB, it will scan in USB. If you put in a particular mode, then it will switch to that mode. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to change a couple of things here. And let me see if I can get it to work here. Oops. Trying to do distance. Okay, I'm going to put 8600. And I'll put 108 perhaps. Okay. And this is going to be wide FM. And I'm going to call this broadcast. Kind of typing in blindly here, broadcast. Okay. There you go. Now I'm going to try .600. I guess maybe it's 0.600 I want. Oops. 0.600. And then I want 1.400. And this would be AM. And I'll call this AM broadcast. Probably it will shorten it for me. No, it didn't. Okay. Yeah, kind of working blindly here a little bit. Let's try this again. FM is what I want. Put in FM. Okay. Hit return. There you go. And I'm going to save this. It's going to get saved as an ICF file. And I'm waiting for that to finish. I'm going to replace that. I'm actually saving this to an external hard drive. And next thing I'm going to do, you select it, and I'm going to do an export. Scan CSV, and this is scan 705. Save. Yes. There you go. There's pros and cons, I guess. I do have the ICOM 7300. It's the first unit I bought. And the main reason is because 100 watts, which is the average. It has a built-in tuner. Yes, it basically will bring anything from 3 to 1 down. Some tuners are out there can go higher, like 10 to 1. From my experience designing and putting up antennas, I always manage to tune the antenna so it's 3 to 1 or less. So, and then let the tuner take care of it. I find it seems to be more optimal when you kind of make the antenna resonant as much as possible. Unless you have an antenna farm, it will never be perfect, but you try whatever your settings is. So, what I'll do now is show how it works on the ICOM 705, and I'm going to have to update this. Okay, I had to move the computer closer to my ICOM 705. Didn't want to disconnect anything there. And I couldn't find my cable, so I borrowed my wife's Beats cable, which is not quite as long, but it works. Okay, I've saved everything in the past, but I'm going to do, first of all, is read what's on the radio. I know it's good. I have no problems with it, and I'm going to have to do an update. And I'm going to go to Program Scan. As you can see, it's the old settings. So I'm going to try to do an import. Okay. It's kind of slow, but it works. Import, okay. There. Now I'm going to do clone right. Okay. There we go. So now the settings that I'd created is there. Okay. Okay, now that I've programmed it, let's take a look and see how it looks. Well, first of all, This is where I would select my memory group, but we didn't make no changes there, so it's not a problem. So you have to go to VFO mode. Oops. Okay, sorry about that. I guess it was somewhere. Okay, go back. Now, there is a scan button. It's kind of unexpected. I'm not sure if this is normal or what, but you gotta double click the scan button twice, real quick. Let me see. Oops, I just hit the camera. Hold on. Oh, there we go. I was hitting the M-pad, reaching out to get it. Okay, so there you go. That's the list. So I got all the 22 bands in there. Yeah, I got the volume turned down. Should have stopped there. So it works. What my setup will be over time, well, it's hard to say. I have to experiment, find out what I like and don't like, and then modify it. In fact, expecting that, I created my own database so I don't have to fire up the radio just to make one changes and then test it later on. I do it on my database, export it, and when I'm in the mood, I'll do the updates. So, okay. Now, I've been getting questions about which radio to buy first. Depending on what licenses they have, what interests that they have, HF, VHF, UHF. I guess the whole idea, you don't want to buy something then and say, oh no, that's wrong. I should have went this way or that way. You need to take into consideration several things. So let me just talk about that for a little. Okay, this is my ICOM 7300, 100 watts. It has basically all the bells and whistles I really use only. I'm sure the other brand, more expensive units will have like dual receive and things of that sort, but I don't have a need for it. But if it's going to be your first ham radio for HF, the 7300. It has a long history, it's proven to be reliable, and they do occasionally do some updates. It has a built-in tuner, as I mentioned, 3-to-1, which is more than adequate. Unless you're using a bed spring or something like that, then you may need to get a tuner. Variable power, everything is variable. I use it quite often on FT8, especially when testing antennas, designing antennas, making antennas, whatever. And I want to find out how well it works in comparison to the other antennas. FT8 is great, you just have a bit of FT8 activities, see how stable the bands are, and then switch to the antenna that you're testing and see what the difference is. Over the years, my favorite design is quad loops. Quad loops. I even made beams for 2 meters, 70 centimeters, quad loops, like several elements. And I designed in such a way that I was able to switch from vertical to horizontal. A station may fade away on you. I switched to vertical and he's back in there. And then he may fade away. I switch back to horizontal and he's back in there. So a lot of the fading in and out is polarity. So I think if you're interested in HF, that's your first priority. And limited budget, I would say the 7300. However, if your first ticket is going to be VHF and UHF, you're not going to have HF privileges, or it's limited, then you may consider the ICOM 705. Let me switch over. The ICOM 705, 10 watts, no built-in tuner. However, if you're going to be using it mostly on VHF and UHF, you don't need a tuner, because you can get your flat match with the antennas, even with 10 meters, especially if you use whips. You can make the adjustments quite easy. Now, the only permit you probably have is VHF, UHF. 10 watts for a home base station is more than adequate. If you plan to use it mobile and remote use all the time, then you probably want 50 watts. And ICOM 2730 provides that, or the 5100 provides that, and several other brands. From my experience, what you'll find over time, you're going to be monitoring or using two different radios at the same time. HF radio and 2 meters, 70 centimeters, or 220, 6 meters perhaps. Most of your conversation locally, of course, is going to be on VHF, UHF, and you want to monitor your local repeater, be available for contact. So you're going to want two radios regardless in the end. So you should plan for that. If you're stuck on VHF, UHF, the ICOM 705 for home base. And then when you have more privileges on the HF band, the 7300 is a good start. Yes, you can get the 705, you can get a tuner, you can get an amplifier. In the end, it'd be cheaper to get the 7300. So that's, every person has a different set of circumstances, or what their budget may be, or what their needs are, what their licenses. I've been a ham since the 70s, advanced, and I've done satellite, moon bounds a little bit. My favorite, that's another feature. I love USB on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. I worked the Aurora with this, talking all the way to Brazil, just by pointing my antenna to the north. And the usual crossband repeaters, the Russian repeaters that were common in the 70s. So, if you like USB and you're limited to VHF, UHF, the 705 is great. I had no problems working with 10 watts. High gain antenna is basically what you need if you want to do the Aurora or the satellite, things of that sort. And you can make your own, so you don't have to spend that much money. So, and again, digital communications becoming more popular, like D-Star, packet radio, things of that sort. These radios will work with it, other than the D-Star on the 7300. However, you can install D-Star devices that will work. In fact, that's what I used years ago before D-Star was built into radios. Anyways, okay, I better cut it short. The main purpose of this video was to show you how to do the program scan for VFO. And I didn't have to make any changes for the memory scan. It's quite readily available as I demonstrated. But yeah, hitting the scan button, that's to me kind of funny. I had to hit twice really quick for the list to pop up. So if you're having trouble, that's probably because you're not clicking twice fast enough. I'm not sure if that's normal, because I've never used this first time. Okay, if this was of interest and answers some of your questions, hopefully, please subscribe. It would be appreciated. Thumbs up also, it helps. I'm hoping to grow this channel, so your support will be appreciated. And any questions or any ideas or other info you request that you may not have seen on my site, mention it, because my hands are into so many things that I eventually get around to it. Can never get bored. You do one thing long enough, and then you move off to the next one. By the time you get around a year later, it's all new again. Okay, take care. Have a nice day. Please don't care to make changes within the program itself, like the ICOM software. I use my database, and I created one for the scan features, program scan. As you can see here, I have for the 52, 705 to 2730. And I will update these things, export it as a CSV file, and then I just import it as shown in the ICOM software. Anyways, thought I'd throw that in. It's handy if you have a database of some sort, or probably can do this with a spreadsheet, and it's so much easier to make changes and save, and you can do it over a period of time. Okay, take care.